Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. So if you can make your way to your seats, we're going to get started this morning here at 1 Million Cups. I want to welcome everyone to the Venture Center. My name is Steve Rice. I work here at the Venture Center. So on behalf of the Venture Center, welcome to 1 Million Cups. How many of you, it's your first time at 1 Million Cups this morning? First time. Awesome. Glad to have Scott. Good to have you. Some new faces. 1 Million Cups is a program that was designed by the Kauffman Foundation out of Kansas City and chartered through their program. It basically is an idea that if we share 1 million cups of coffee or other beverage, we can fundamentally change the layout of our ecosystem in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So we are well on our way to 1 million cups. And so we welcome you this morning with that kind of goal in mind. There's plenty of coffee, so help us with that goal. We do want to thank the Kauffman Foundation for their support in this endeavor. Also, we want to thank the Little Rock Regional Chamber of Commerce for their support in getting this launched. I believe it was last year, and really supporting the effort in keeping this going. Also, the Venture Center and the Little Rock Tech Park for the space. And we also want to thank our organizers, Tim Freeman, Kim Lane, Iana, and who's the fourth? Spencer Jones. All right, and we just had a transition with our organizers, so I'm still remembering everyone's names. This morning we have a treat. We're going to hear from one of our organizers. Tim Freeman is the founder of HARK TV, and he launched, was it about a year ago, Tim? January, almost a year ago, with the kind of mission to highlight stories of entrepreneurism here in the South, the good things that are going on. We're wrapping up Techtober and have been focusing on all the good things happening in Little Rock and Central Arkansas, all of Arkansas, as a matter of fact, the tech history we have, as well as what's coming down the pipeline. And so this morning, Tim's going to kind of update us on what's been happening with HARK and what he has planned for the future. So please join me in welcoming Tim Freeman.
Do we need the mic? Yeah, because we have the, cool. Hey, good morning. I don't have a slide deck. We normally have a slide deck. I think Steve's going to throw up my logo and maybe my Twitter handle. I just emailed it to you, by the way. We got a late notification last night that, as Steve mentioned, we're going through a transition with the organizers for 1 Million Cups. So we're in the process of getting reorganized. So I found out late last night I was going to present. So didn't bring a slide deck, but I did bring a story. So as Steve mentioned, about a year ago, back in January, we launched a company called HARK, and I'm excited to have an opportunity to tell you a bit about that. Everybody raise your hand if you're originally from the South. So that's most everyone in the room. Raise your hand if you've lived in the South for more than 10 years. Okay, so I'm a native Arkansan, moved away right after high school, and was in the military, was in the Marines for 8 years. Started architecture school in the late 90s, and suddenly everything was a .com. Everybody remember that? Anybody old enough to remember when suddenly everything was a .com? So that was brand new for me. That was a whole new world. I didn't come from that background. I didn't even have a computer in my home growing up, and I never thought that I would have a career that was in any way related to technology. Those weren't the prospects that we typically thought about when I was a kid on a bike in North Little Rock. And I realized very quickly that the .com world, that the architecture world could be a hobby. I could do that anytime, but the things that happened in the .com universe would change the next 1,000 years and the next 10. And I wanted to be a part of that. So I quit school and jumped into the .com world, and a year later I'd started my first business and was an entrepreneur and never looked back. And I've been a lifelong entrepreneur ever since then. 5 years later, I moved back home to Arkansas and continued in that career. I started 2 businesses, both design and consulting companies, and then ultimately a furniture design company. And over a period of about 10 years, got really heavily involved in the startup community here in Arkansas. Late last year, myself and some friends were kind of discussing the state of the startup community, and we were involved in, everybody hangs out at coffee shops and talks about startups, right? Raise your hand if you've done that before, right? So we all do that, and had a bit of an epiphany that no one was telling our story, that there was tons of media related to startup activity, related to technology, related to innovation in the state of Arkansas, or across the country rather, but there was no one really focused on, no one really telling the story of what was happening in Arkansas. So we launched HARK as a web video series without really the vision at the time to turn it into a media company. It was just going to be this recording the conversations of startup entrepreneurs, of developers, of creatives around the state. But over the summer, that scaled, the idea scaled very quickly to become essentially, everybody familiar with TechCrunch, Mashable, VentureBeat, The Verge? These are all major brands that are focused on innovation in the startup community. And they are hyper-focused on the coast. They're largely focused on anywhere that doesn't include the South, basically. So we launched HARK in January as a web video series, and began the process of developing new formats and building out the business model. Okay, good. So what are the results of that been? Today, we're basically, I'm trying to reorganize my thoughts. Got a little off track. Today we serve about 50,000 visitors a week, mostly through Facebook content. We're in the process of building a new website, which will launch here in the next couple weeks. We've gone from a web video series to a full service news service that truly serves the South. And we're also in the process of producing multiple formats of feature-length shows that are related to startup activity in the Southeast. So how do we define the Southeast? So from Arkansas, here at home, south to Louisiana, east to Florida, north to Southern Virginia, sort of, draw a line back home to Arkansas, everything that's in that fence. Basically, we like to joke and say, if somebody has a good idea in the shower in Birmingham in 5 years, we want to be there to cover it. So that's what HARK is about. And that's my very quickly put together presentation, and I'll go ahead and open it up for questions. Joe.
Question, how do people come to you, how do you select? How do you select who's going to be on your vignettes, and then what's going to be kind of the next generation after that?
It's actually a really good question. So one of the concerns that we had in the beginning was, would there be, was our assumption off base that there would be enough content to cover? And the reality is that there's more than, at this point, with the size of the team that we have, than we can actually keep up with. As far as the selection process, we try to stay ahead of events as much as possible with a content calendar. So we've got about a 60-day window that we're looking at. So we just recently covered Made by Few and Little Rock Tech Fest here in Little Rock. We covered Startup Week Chattanooga week before last. We did New Orleans Entrepreneurship, or New Orleans Tech Week, with New Orleans Entrepreneurship Week coming up within the last month. As far as individuals or individual startups, we'll typically have a sit-down conversation, or at least a phone call or a Skype call with people to determine whether or not there's really a good story there to be had. And there have definitely been times when we've gone and shot content or approached a story and then decided later on that it wasn't really at the point yet where it was content that was really worth publishing. But the truth is that we really haven't had much problem with that, because there really is an incredible amount of quality startups, really smart people across the region that are doing really amazing things. I had an opportunity over the summer to go to Chattanooga I meet with a company called Branch Technology, which operates the largest 3D printer in the world. It looks like a big dinosaur. Most people aren't aware of that. I wasn't aware of that. I wasn't aware of that literally until I got to Chattanooga on a completely different story and had an opportunity to cover that. So we haven't had a lot of trouble with finding good content or having to really seriously vet the stories. Most of the stuff that's come to us has been really strong on the front end. Uni.
One is like, how are you going to make money? The second one, what is your strategy? Are you going to find some independent creators and people who create and build and send you content? How are you going to do this?
Thank you for asking. So our revenue model is a hybrid, with the second piece of that hybrid in about an 18-month, looking at about an 18-month window. So right away, advertising and sponsorships serve as our primary stream of revenue. The goal is to get to a point where we have enough content to tip the scales of the content value equilibrium to take on a Netflix, Hulu subscription model. And that kind of leads to another important detail. At the time that we were putting together this idea, the roads kind of converged with the death of cable. So how many people here actually have cable? Anyone? Okay, there's a few people still have cable. Cable TV really truly is a dying model. In September, when Apple rolled out the new Apple TV, Tim Cook actually had a quote on his slide deck, his slide presentation. Tim's better prepared than I am. The future of TV is apps. So what that means is, well, and let me just tell our story related to that. So for the last year, we've basically kind of been running around preaching in the wilderness that cable's dead, and then Apple's going to get in the TV business, and it's not a device. It's not a big screen. It's actually going to be a service. And a lot of people were confused about what we meant by that. But the vision was to get truly into the TV business. So we really wanted to become sort of the CNBC of Southern startups. And the way that we would do that would be to develop an app. And it was predicated on the idea that Apple and Google and Amazon, that Xbox and PlayStation, they would all eventually open up software development kits for developers to create apps for their devices where content creators could truly create a TV network, just like you develop apps for a mobile phone. And so that's where, when I mentioned earlier that we're in the process of developing full-length, full-format television shows, that's what that's for. So when we launch that model, and we'll have a mobile app as well, when we launch those content delivery systems, you'll have free content that's supported by advertising, and you'll have access to premium features, not premium content, but premium features for a nominal fee, $3, $5 a month. We haven't determined yet what that price point is going to be, but that's a significant opportunity. If we're pushing 500,000 viewers, 500,000 subscribers a month at $5 a month per subscription, it's pretty good revenue. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's good. I also asked about how are you going to actually make out of those things?
Say it again.
Do you have independent editors?
Oh, yeah. The second part of your question was, where does the content come from and the strategy? Yeah. So there are 3 major cities in the South: New Orleans, Nashville, and Atlanta. The content model is really predicated upon having backpack journalists, affiliates that are based in those cities that have a 250, 300-mile radius of a beat, essentially, to cover those stories. And we'll either pay them as contractors or as full-time employees to report on events that are happening in that area. And we'll live by a calendar and send them where they need to be as stories and opportunities come into us, or as events are happening that are already on our calendar to cover those events. And they'll go shoot that content, send it back to us, or edit it themselves and send it back to us to be edited. And then we'll deploy it. Any other questions? Kim?
I'm Kim from Arkansas Money and Politics, and I'm an organizer. If we wanted to watch one of your videos today, where is the best platform to find you guys? Like your Twitter or YouTube? Yeah. Especially for like the Tech Fest type content.
Facebook right now is the best place to find most of our video content. We're in the process of building a new website. We have a website that's really more of a placeholder. You can find some of the archived content on that site. We'll have the new site up in the next couple of weeks. And when it launches, we'll have a few surprises that I can't get into just yet. But when it launches, that will be the primary place to find both our news content as well as the full-length shows, and that address is HARK.tv.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, what's up, Luke?
Luke Irvin, founder of South. Are you doing anything with Snapchat, or are you paying attention to what Snapchat's doing right now?
So I'm going to use Snapchat as kind of an avatar, because that's a perfect question for my philosophy on any new platform, any new direction. We want to be really intentional about the way that we do anything. There are some things that were sort of in the beginning, they were obvious. There were things that had to be done, Facebook, Twitter, and a website, right? Along the way, Periscope launched. And when Periscope and Meerkat first came out, and we were looking at live mobile broadcasting, which is truly a revolutionary concept, I knew that it was a big opportunity, but there wasn't a strategy behind it yet. And everyone was really super excited about it, but we weren't exactly sure what's the best way for us to begin to use that platform. So the same thing is true for Snapchat. We don't have a strategy on how Snapchat works for us yet. There are some ideas that are on the whiteboard, but we're not going to jump into it until we know exactly how we want to do it, because the problem you run into, and this is true again with any platform, if you jump into a new platform, and this is particularly true with social media, if you jump into a new platform and you don't have a strategy, what you almost always run into is a problem with consistency. So if you decide, you know what, I think we'd like to start writing stories, or we have an opportunity to write a story, let's go ahead and write a story, but we don't have a strategy to consistently write stories, and you write 3 stories and then stories disappear, written stories disappear, what was that? It becomes kind of random, and it's not part of a cohesive plan. So all of those things are taken into consideration. Snapchat is definitely something that's being looked at. How would we deploy, how would we utilize Snapchat in a consistent way? So we're paying attention to it, but we're not currently utilizing it. Same is true with Instagram. We were talking about it last night. Shareability is super important in anything that we do, especially when you have a low budget for marketing. You need as many shares as you can get. You want your content to go viral organically, and that's very limited with Instagram. So we're looking at Instagram and saying, okay, we know Instagram is a good platform, but what's the best way for us to use it? What value does it really represent to us? And so the same question's being asked about Snapchat. And by the way, I have to send a shout out real quick. I mentioned Periscope and Meerkat. If you guys aren't familiar with Linksys, Linksys is an Arkansas-based live mobile streaming platform. And we started using them over the summer, developed a relationship with them, something we really didn't have access to with a company like Periscope. And the response has been phenomenal. We went from a handful of viewers on virtually every Periscope broadcast that we launched to literally dozens and even hundreds of viewers through Linksys with no followers. So if you haven't checked those guys out, please do. It's LYNXUS, Linksys, on the App Store. Any other questions?
Hey, Tim.
Hey, what's up, Mike?
How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good. So you're stepping into a area that, has been and will continue to be under flux.
Yeah.
From a competitive
Constantly.
standpoint, we know the big media companies are slow, but they're big. They're really big.
The Goliaths, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how you position yourselves traditional versus, let's call it, West Coast media, versus what you're trying to do as a smaller player today, and where you see yourself being?
Okay, I'm going to try to answer this question. In terms of competitive advantage, is that what you're driving at? Okay. Well, as I mentioned, the big opportunity that we recognize, and I analogize this to my shoulders. I mentioned that I'm a Arkansas native. I'm a Southerner, and I definitely in the beginning I had that chip on my shoulder about the fact that Arkansas was not really getting any coverage, and then I saw that was true across the region. That's absolutely true, but the entrepreneur shoulder said that's an opportunity. No one's doing that, and honestly, I literally lost sleep for about 8 months over the idea that on any given day, TechCrunch was going to show up and put an office in Nashville. I remember back in late September, early October, CNBC came to Nashville for a day and spent a day covering the Nashville startup scene, which is truly exploding. It's just unbelievable what's happening in Nashville. And I remember when they made the announcement that they were going to come to Nashville, I was all nervous, like, oh no, this is it. All those big Goliaths, they're on the march, right? But the reality is it was kind of a backhanded compliment to come to Nashville for a day and talk about Nashville. It's great, and I was actually glad to see that happen. But there's no, again, consistency, like I mentioned to Luke. There's no one that says, we're going to make this our focus. There's no one that says, the South is going to be our territory. If you come to New Orleans, you'll leave New Orleans. We did what we call the summer tour over the summer and went to all these different cities around the South. And I realized in the middle of that maybe tour was the wrong word. Maybe invasion was a better word, that we were there to kind of make our presence known and to not leave, because those are the communities that we wanted to serve. There's no vision for us to go to Portland. There's no plan to go to Kansas City or Brooklyn. There are great things that are happening in those places, but they're all saturated. There's tons of stuff happening in terms of media covering those communities and the activity in those parts of the country, but there's really nothing consistently here. So does that in part answer your question? So I think that's one of our big primary advantages, is that from the beginning, as we pointed out, there's just really no one that's consistently covering the South as a region. So we're going to make that our territory.
Any other questions?
John?
How do you get traffic to your site, or how well used that you're coming up with a new site?
Yeah.
Is it traditional SEO, SEM kind of stuff, or is there something special with video search engines?
The short answer is every way possible. We look at every possible tool, every platform that's within our budget to drive traffic to the site. The really good news is that starting literally from zero with no money whatsoever to speak of with marketing, if our web video series was our MVP, we truly validated the idea with one format that was produced. I mean, when I say a low budget, I mean, I literally mean no budget. That was, to be quite honest, the first content that we produced, I know this is probably against the rules. I hated it. Like, I was never a fan really of the content that we created. I was more interested in the idea and the model. And I was afraid that it wouldn't get traction, that people would look at it and go, this isn't really very good. And the exact opposite was true. So to answer your question, with marginally good content, with no money to speak of, within a month, we were in virtually every state in the country and 40 countries around the world. And that was all because people just saw it, they gravitated to it, they said, I'm interested in what these people have to say in this one community of Little Rock, Arkansas, and it just went viral. It just went crazy. So moving forward, the goal obviously is to have a more significant budget for boosting social traffic, for driving traffic to the website through traditional and non-traditional marketing campaigns, through SEO, through SEM. There are lots of new platforms and lots of new technologies that are being developed to co-share social and viral content. So we're looking at all of those things. It's kind of like the question, Luke's question about how are you approaching Snapchat? Well, we're approaching the marketing in the same way. We're testing everything. We're seeing what makes sense for us and what works within our budget. We're turning over every stone possible because everything in our business is about audience. the value that we represent to advertisers is always going to be predicated upon numbers. And the bigger those numbers are, the more valuable we are and the more revenue we can generate. So we're not really ignoring anything out of hand. But right now, with the limited budget that we have, we're trying to drive as much traffic through social to the website as we can through traditional boosting of Facebook and Twitter. And then just counting on you guys, honestly, to share our content. We get a lot of likes. I need a lot more shares. So please help with the shares.
Okay, we end all 1 million cups the same way. So Tim, what is one thing we can do as a community to help you?
Share. Follow us on social media. We're on Twitter at @WatchHark, and then find us on Facebook. As I mentioned earlier, we're also on Instagram, and share our content. If you think that the content is valuable, and keep in mind too, little transparency here. We didn't get into this business because we came from media backgrounds. I come from a brand development and a furniture design background. I got into the business because I recognized there was a need for the community to have the stories told. And so I threw myself into it. I didn't do video a year ago. I had no experience whatsoever with that, but I knew that I could immerse myself in it and learn it. So what really drove me to do it, and I think this is really true of most entrepreneurs, the perception in the community is that entrepreneurs are driven by a desire to go make a lot of money. And I don't think that's what keeps most entrepreneurs awake at night. I think most entrepreneurs are driven by their idea and the desire to build something with a purpose. And our purpose is to tell the stories, your stories, the stories of the startup communities of the South. So even if you think the content is not great at this point, I promise it's going to continue to get better. And just please share it, because it's really about the platform and the idea. And we need to drive as much interest and awareness in the brand as we possibly can. And every time somebody shares a Facebook post, I do a backflip in my living room. So I appreciate all of your support.
Thanks, Tim. Steve's gonna give us some announcements.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. All right, just wrapping up real quickly here. I want, on behalf of the Venture Center, to invite all of you to stick around if you'd like for Co-work Wednesday. You're welcome to work out of our space anywhere in these common areas for the rest of the day. Also, just a few quick announcements. I wanted to make sure to mention, I think it was last week, Katie with the Delta Regional Authority was here talking about the Delta Challenge. If you have a company or you know somebody who has a company, the deadline to sign up for the Delta Challenge is this Friday. You can do so at dra.gov/entrepreneur. It's a great opportunity to become a fellow of the Delta Entrepreneur Network and possibly win a trip to New Orleans Entrepreneur Week in the spring to present your company. And it's a great way to connect across all of the states of the Delta. So wanted to make sure you all are thinking of that. Be sure to register. That pitch day for local will be here on November 5th in the evening. It's a Thursday evening. So take advantage of that. Also, the next day, then we'll be hosting with Euler 2 days to startup. So if you're planning to participate in that, it's kind of like an amped up startup weekend that will start Friday night and then go through Sunday. So go ahead and sign up for that on our website, venturecenter.co/2days. Are there any other announcements from the community, any events coming up that anyone wants to make sure everyone's aware of? All right, thanks so much. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have an event or know of an event, please come find me. One of the products I launched is called Attend It, and the whole premise of that is a one-stop shop for everyone to discover events. So as we're going into the end of the year, not seeing as many events, or I'm not discovering them. So if you're hosting of any or know of any, come find me so we can get them added to the service so people can stay in the loop on what events are going on around here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey guys, Lee Stroud, Merger Match. I'm excited to say that Merger Match is looking to hire a sales manager. So if you know somebody that I ought to interview, please drop me a note. They have to be able to deal with a lot of chaos, but obviously since this is a startup, but I need somebody who can be very intentional about strategy development, and would like to learn about Merger Match, so send them to me. I just need 2 more people to interview. So don't flood me with people unless you think they're going to be really, really good. Thanks.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks again for coming out. There's plenty of coffee here in the kitchen, so feel free to stick around, visit, connect, and if you'd like to stay for Cowork Wednesday, feel free to do so. Thanks so much for coming out. Have a great day.